Hello, and welcome to Our Ventura TV. I'm MB Hanrahan, and today, as I always say, my friend and my guest is Dave Armstrong, longtime associate of mine in many, many projects, many public and social projects, may I say. And today he wears the hat of being the CEO of Smith Hobson, which has a huge history of its own. But I'm bringing Dave on today because as a steward of land that has historically been used for citrus production, which is extremely historical to Ventura County, Dave came to some interesting decisions that I just want to share. I don't even want to let the cat out of the bag. So Dave, I'm going to give to you to take away, talk about your land that you are directing and organizing, I guess, not really the right words. And then what brought you to come to some different decisions of how to use that land?
Sure. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be on with you, MB. So what we're talking about is a long owned family ranch north of Foothill, kind of at the end of Wells. And it's a large ranch. We use it for cattle grazing, citrus and avocado production. And it's been planted with trees for about 60 years, some of which are still original to the site. A couple things have happened since I joined this. I'm not a family member, but I've taken over for a 6th-generation family here in Ventura. And a couple things, big things have happened. One is the Thomas Fire. We lost a lot of trees. We lost cattle.
2017, I think, right? Or 20?
Yeah. Okay. In December, and about 6 miles of fencing that we had to replace. So it was a big event for us. We were right in the path early on in the fire, and set, at the edge of Santa Paula, between Santa Paula and Ventura. We had to figure out what to do. There's a couple of other things that are going on in agriculture, especially, and that includes climate change and specifically the lack of water.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is just there's been a lot of progress made in agricultural practices that are more regenerative and pay attention to the soil and the sustainability of that, in addition to kind of the quality of the products and kind of their healthiness to consume them. We pay attention to pesticides and things like that in ways we never used to. So there's this kind of confluence of events. We had to replant things. The other thing, interestingly, was one of the first things the Trump administration did in like their first week was open up the lemon market to Argentina. And basically, it's just barely started now to import lemons, but it could completely swamp the lemon industry if they decide to import as much as they can. They're a huge lemon grower, and they can grow it cheaper than we can because the other thing is, as of January 1st, all our labor costs are going up dramatically. So we have to be flexible and adaptable to respond to all these different conditions that affect agriculture in Ventura County.
Let me just say one thing, because the nature of our program is that it's evergreen. In other words, it will be on the internet forever. Even though, we're talking about an area, Ventura County, that has been historically associated with citrus growing and avocados and such like that. But climate change and changing markets that are suddenly able to, import, export and such like that, and pandemics, things that affect our supply chains and the ability to import and export. All of these things are not only happening now, they will be happening in the future. So what we're talking about is pivoting in breaking the mindset of something that's gone on and gone on and gone on forever. And no, it is not necessarily going off in the future. So I just had to interject that because I feel that this message is specific to our area, but it's also has potential importance just to anybody listening. So go ahead. Sorry for interrupting.
Global. It's absolutely global.
Thank you.
We can't continue doing things the way we've always done them. And so as a legacy company, it's really important for us to make that shift for resiliency, for sustainability. Just as an organization, we can no longer do some of the things that we have done in the past. So the question is, how do we do that? How do we manage risk? How do we keep it evergreen, if you will? And so we made a few decisions. One, we've tried to obviously do things like make all of our irrigation systems much more efficient. We're working, there are Israeli companies that are amazing at water efficiency and using agricultural technology to monitor that, so you're only using the water that you absolutely need to. But one of the things that we came across, and I think kind of why we're here, is I happened to have a meeting with a farmer in Goleta who has started growing coffee in Santa Barbara County. And it intrigued me. And he looks for basically avocado groves as being compatible for growing coffee. That's kind of the standards. If you can grow avocados, you can also grow coffee.
Who knew?
And exactly, I had no idea. If you look on the Starbucks website, it says coffee only grows around the equator. And we're a long ways from the equator here. So I was a little skeptical at first that one, you could do it because there's lots of kind of climate risks, weather risks, water, all sorts of things. So, but it was intriguing because it's not something that's really been done on any kind of scale here. There's about 70 farms in California already. Most of them are in San Diego County. And which is interesting because their water in San Diego is about 4 times more expensive as the water here.
Wow.
So they're even more attuned to irrigation issues and the value of a product relative to the water that goes into it and the inputs. So we toured the properties. We found sites within the canyons that were well protected because coffee is sensitive to 2 things. One is wind, which we're in Ventura, we get a lot of it. And the other is cold. If it freezes, these are tropical plants. So if you get below 32, it's a real problem. So we found areas that we know kind of from previous agricultural practices in citrus that the areas where it doesn't freeze. And where it's protected from the wind as much as possible. And so what we did, so after researching it, it made a lot of sense for us. We did it, although I think technically we're the largest coffee farm in the continental United States right now. It's still a relatively small scale. So what we did was we took out old lemon trees, less productive lemon trees, and left a number of them in, because the other thing that we're trying to do, there's a couple of premises that we started before even thinking about farming, and that is regenerative soil practices. How do you keep the soil regenerated, not blowing away like the Dust Bowl, not depleting it completely of organic matter. So that was really important. Obviously, the irrigation was important. But the other thing is we're really moving away from what's called monocropping. Mm-hmm. If you look at typical agriculture, it's one type of plant or tree for as far as the eye can see. And what we're trying to do is integrate all sorts of different things that complement each other, regenerate the soil, protect what we're trying to grow from other elements like wind. And so how does it all work together harmoniously to create a more sustainable future? Because coffee trees live for about 35 years. So it's a long-term investment. And like an avocado or a lemon tree, it takes about 3 years after you plant it to get any kind of production. So it's a long-term investment.
Wow. And
one that we really, it's a big step to do this, and want to give it every chance for success. We're also doing it all organic and fair trade.
Wow.
So those are important factors as well. So what we did is we took out some of the lemons, but we left some of the lemons to provide shelter from the wind and some shading. And we planted about 18,000 trees last spring in a number of blocks, 2 different canyons, and used things like in the planting hole, we use things like biochar, which is an organic kind of charcoal process that really helps the roots take. Very sustainable and great for the soil. We also interplanted within the blocks of coffee a tropical tree called the Inga. The Inga. So everything that we plant produces food of some sort. We don't use water on anything decorative.
Wow.
So we're trying to really concentrate on how do we get the most out of our limited water resources. And so the Inga, for example, it creates what's called the ice cream bean, which most people haven't seen, but it's delicious. Kind of sweet. It's white, fleshy fruit, and it's not exactly like ice cream, but it's very fibery. But it's called the ice cream bean. But it also the tree grows very rapidly, provides shade for the coffee, and also as part of its processes injects nitrogen into the soil as well. So it complements the nitrogen being drawn out by the coffee, and and they work sympathetically. The other thing we did is, we left in 60-year-old lemon trees, but then we used the architecture of the lemon trees and have planted passion fruit as an additional screening, but the passion fruit will grow into the lemon trees and create another food product using the same water that we're already using for lemon trees. So we're kind of doubling the number of products that we get out of that and providing other beneficial resources.
Well, every situation is going to be different, but if and we all have to wrap this up. I mean, I know this conversation can go on forever, but this is a long-term project, and the point of it is that there are options. There are options, and there are ways to pivot, and it takes some visionary thinking and a lot of knowledge as well, and trust. Is one last thing, if you can answer this quickly. I mean, if other people were interested in what you've done coming at from any angle, what do you think is the best way for them to start getting some knowledge, like when you had to start out on your process? I mean, it's just
learn
how to grow coffee here or something like.
There are a ton of resources available now on all of this, on sustainable agricultural regenerative soils. Patagonia is doing a lot in that field. Fringe Coffee in Goleta has some resources, and we've gotten a number of grants to do this. So there's basically all you have to do is Google it, and you'll find all sorts of things. It's really out there now. So,
well, Dave, I want to thank you so much for this. And you heard it here, folks. Coffee from Ventura County to be continued.
Become the coffee capital of the U.S. So.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And I want to thank you for joining us today on Our Ventura TV. I am Mary Beth Hanrahan, MB Hanrahan, and I'll be seeing you soon.